Oh boy, it has been a while since I've done a Let's Talk. So, we had some not great news in the Square Enix departments. Final Fantasy 16 came out, it launched, and as you can see over here on the news articles, it has lost. Well, Square Enix has lost 2 billion in market revenue since Final Fantasy 16 has launched. So just to show what the stocks are looking like for its it is they're a little down. They're a little down. It's been a rough few months for Square Enix on the stock market. A new report says Japanese game maker has lost about almost 2 billion in market revenue since the notable launch of Final Fantasy 16 in late June. Now, if this was millions of dollars, it wouldn't be so bad, but if it's billions, that's kind of some concerning issues right there. So FF16 came out in late June. According to Bloomberg, Square Enix shares have nosedived because of weak Final Fantasy 16 sales, in addition to the company's reporting a considerable profit decline last month. For its part, Square Enix has previously fought back against the claims that Final Fantasy 16 has underperformed. In July, it said sales were extremely strong for the JRPG on PS5. Investors and analysis also apparently not too sure about Square Enix's future, though. It's a Bloomberg. So basically, what we're getting at this is like Sony is saying, well, no, Square Enix themselves is saying, yeah, it's like being on Sony's platform, being exclusive to Sony's platform has been actually all right. And they're looking at FF16 sales as FF16 itself sold really well. What the reason why this would be an issue of $2 billion in market revenue loss would be because they have had a couple games not sell very well. Bloomberg talked with Tokyo-based game consultant Serkan Toto. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing these. Who said that the company has problems with their games outputs. He pointed at Square Enix doesn't have enough titles aimed for blockbuster status. Instead, they're kind of okay and very forgettable. UBS Securities Analysis Fukuyama added that Square Enix hasn't built another brand as big as Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest. So if we look at 5 years ahead, there isn't much that investors can be confident in the company's future. Fukuyama said, okay, I mean, yeah. So one big game release this year for the company outside those two storied series, which is Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy, was Forspoken. For PS5 and PC, but Square Enix did admit Forspoken sales were lackluster. And yes, as soon as we saw the demo for it, really, I mean, as soon as the main character started talking, it was kind of like apparent that there is going to be kind of rough sailing ahead for the game because they tried to go the way of just she was like girl boss, but at the same time she was just pissed off at the world and just being an asshole to everyone. We saw a couple games come out like that. None of them did very well because the main character is not really relatable. Like people don't want to hear a main character just be an asshole to everyone. That's just the kind of fact in the gaming, space of storytelling. You want the character to kind of be relatable in a way, and not everybody is all like, "Yeah, I don't care what you guys say. I'm gonna go do the thing." You got to make it to where it's like, okay, I don't really know what's going on, but the world is going to be telling me what's going on. And then you kind of get the story through that. So then you grow alongside the character and that character has an arc and a journey, like any good story has. Forspoken, for whatever reason, they just went with that whole thing of like, I'm a girl boss. I'm from New York. I'm a badass. I don't care what you got to tell me. I did not play Forspoken. I actually have a copy of it Forspoken now. I did not play Forspoken all the way through. From what I've seen, I'm just going off from like the initial reaction to it and the reason why the sales wouldn't be, why it wouldn't catch fire on sales wise. There was nothing in word of mouth to make me think anything other than what I just described. So that would translate into the sales dipping because everybody's like, well, if that's just what Forspoken is, I just don't care. Bloomberg reports that new Square Enix CEO Kiryu, I want to say it's Kiryu, I don't know, plans to shift the company's priorities to big budget games and away from smaller titles. Plus, Kiryu wants to get away from outsourcing development. You do have to spend a lot of money on outsourcing. I do get where he's coming from there. Going in for bigger budget games, so this could be a double-edged sword. If they go in for bigger budget games, it could actually be very good in the long run. FF7, the whole Final Fantasy VII remake series, I guess you could say, Everything is sold really well on that because it is big budget, AAA. Everybody's on deck to make this thing as big as it can possibly be. FF16 had the same thing, and again, that sold as well as they predicted. It's the games that were made, like Forspoken was not made to be this big AAA, big budget thing. It looks like it, but that's because their game engine that they're using, it can do really shiny games and all that, and there's a lot more that goes into the game development of polishing. You have to make sure that the controls are tightened up. You have to make sure there's no bugs. Like you can't fall through the maps. You can't. The AI is working properly. The let's see here, the balancing on the weapons versus how much hit points the enemies have. All this stuff goes into consideration when developing the game. There's a million other things also. Sound, the sound effects work correctly. The music hits at the right times. All that stuff goes into consideration. Now, if you are just doing something that is like a AA production, which is you're not spending as much time, as much budget to make sure that everything is cleaned up and is precisely made and hits when it's supposed to hit and everything when you're running through the game world, then you can end up having something. I feel like Forspoken probably had that problem in it because Forspoken, again, it was basically a side project that they greenlit to be a full-on game. It was not supposed to be something. It was if you remember, there was a tech demo that looked very similar to Forspoken for the Unreal Engine 5 tech demos and everything. And I'm pretty sure a part of that tech demo was made into Forspoken or something. I'm still pretty sure about that point. I don't know. I haven't really caught anything of developers talking about it because it's just one of those things. People don't really talk about tech demos after, if it sells the Unreal Engine and that's that, okay, don't talk about the tech demo anymore. You know why? Because it's a tech demo. There's going to be a lot of flaws if you really deep dive into it. It's a demo. It's not a full product. So, just like seeing that they're going to be focusing more on FF7 Rebirth and stuff like that scale of things, that is really cool that they're going to be focusing on bigger projects like Strangers of Paradise. I see it sitting there in that list right there. Crisis Core, like if they were to remake Dirge of Cerberus in some way, I feel like those games would be kind of like the side projects and they wouldn't be the main focus. So I don't think we're going to be seeing too many more of those because they are losing money on it. Like people are not buying them, so they're not going to make them. That's the smart business money way of doing it. Now, I think the biggest elephant in the room, though, to really talk about is if they're going for bigger projects only and not doing smaller titles, then you're not going to be seeing Square Enix games on a regular basis. We're going to be seeing them every 4 years, maybe 5 years, depending on how long they take to make stuff. Can they ride out the development train, I guess you could say? Can they ride out the period of time that they need for development and funding to make the big product, the big AAA product, development cycles that they need? Can they ride that out for a 4 to 5 year period? Which I would think Square Enix would have enough money, but at the same time, if they just lost $2 billion and their stocks are not looking, great right now, it does kind of raise a question of can they do it? FF16 it launched and then they're saying $2 billion lost revenue. Well, FF16 could have made way more money if it was on the PS4. First of all, it couldn't even run on the PS4. The hardware is just too old at this time. If it is coming to the PC, we do have just about confirmation that we will be seeing it on the PC. It was in this list somewheres that it will be coming to PC a little bit later on. I think it was a leak, possibly something, or a rumor to be announced. Anyways, for Windows, we do know it. So PC is going to actually most likely boost up the sales of Final Fantasy 16. FF16 was not a bad title. There was a decent storyline going. It was a pacing issue that FF16 had more than anything. It was a pacing issue, and it's because who they brought in. Yoshi knows how to make MMOs. Well, MMOs have a very slow pace to them, and then they have it's a very slow pace, and then all of a sudden it ramps up, and you have this giant thing that happens, big boss fight, and then it slows back down again, and it's like the cruise mode, and then all of a sudden, boom, big thing happens again. That's usually how MMOs are put together, and then it's something to do, because you need a slower thing to get everybody on the same page, to get your group together, and then you go in and do the big boss fight as a group it's an MMO for that, for a reason. Um, so that's kind of the way they made an MMO, but a single player driven MMO. And again, it's just like when it was slow pace, you felt the slow paceness. I was starting to doze off when I was playing the slow pace part of FF16. When it kicks in and you have the big boss fights and the big major story moments happening in FF16, it's super cool. I think I said probably to wait for it to go on sale. I think I said for FF16 happening there. So FF14's new expansion is coming to Xbox next year. That's going to boost sales. They got Dragon Quest coming to Switch and Windows. So they got I guess it's a new Dragon Quest game that's launching on multiple platforms. That's going to boost up a little bit of the revenue source. Again, okay, so the Pixel remasters sold pretty decently. I've heard a lot of good talk about the Pixel remasters. What else do we have on here? Crisis Core did all right. It sold on multiple platforms. I'm pretty sure they sold it enough to say that they broke even, if not even made some decent profit off from it. So the install base for the PS5, let's see here. So this is from PlayStation Lifestyle. Final Fantasy 16 sales fail to hit Square Enix's high-end expectation. Funny. Okay, so this is from when it sold 3 million copies in just a week. However, the acclaimed RPG has not hit Square Enix's highest expectations. So it must have done it in the month or two after the initial week sale. Because again, the first week is what the investors look at. You want to break even on the first week, and then you start making profit after the first week. This is the reason why I always say, if you want to really boycott a game, don't buy it in the first week. The new Call of Duty, I think I'm probably going to skip the new Call of Duty for the first month or so that MW3 is out, at least. And then I might consider checking it out there because they screwed over content creators. So we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening on that release. But Square Enix blamed the PS5 install base. PS5 is vastly outselling the Xbox and slightly behind the adoption rate of the PS4. Or that the company has plans to boost sales now that more systems are out there. A little unexpected since other stories concerning FF16 aside from the company reportedly worrying about pre-order numbers were all positive. Let's see here, especially when tied to a single system with a user base of 40 million people, which is what Square Enix applied with its extremely well statements. Okay, so they were looking at probably, I don't know, maybe 10 million copies or something, and if undersold, maybe not even 10 million, 8 million, probably 8 million for Final Fantasy, and it sold 3. So yeah, and that's Japan for you. 8 million copies is a lot. That's like Grand Theft Auto probably sells GTA 6 will probably sell maybe 10 15 million copies, because that is giant, hugely expected. Cyberpunk I think sold maybe 8 million copies, 9 million or something like that. I'm guessing on these numbers. This is totally guesstimate stuff, but the games like Elden Ring and stuff like that, I think Elden Ring might have been around the 12 million mark. I don't, again, just guesstimate. I'm thinking of terms of high-end sales. I'm probably very wrong on those sales. Just putting it out there. But yeah, 3 million is a little bit lower end, but that's also because people are looking at it well, this could be just an MMO single player type of thing with bad pacing, which it was. I was sitting there saying that, but I was hoping for the best, and I was curious to see because FF14 sold so well. The fact that FF16 sold as well as it did, I think contributes to the fact that there was this big giant talk about FF14 having so much player base on it. And anybody who doesn't like MMOs, there's a lot of people. Majority of people, I think, kind of don't like MMOs. They rather have a single player story driven game that you can just jump in, check it out for a few hours, and then put it off onto the side, go do life stuff, come back for a few more hours. And you can just single player games are just way more easily accessible like that. And I think FF14, because it's a lot of the same studio that made FF14 was making FF16, especially the director. Which directors are rock stars now. I think that really pushed forward of everybody like, oh, okay, I'll check out FF16. Let's see what everybody's liking so much about FF14. You know, because it's on the same level as that. And it really was. It's just again, the MMOs don't sell on. I will say on console, they don't sell like MMOs don't do as crazy big numbers as a big single player game would do. They do numbers, but just not to the level of what a single player game would do. So, yeah, very interesting. I think this also, for a side note of all this stuff, I think it would kind of shoot down the whole thing of like maybe Sony wouldn't want to if Square Enix is losing $2 billion in market share value. This could go one of two ways. Sony might not want to work, you know, or invest in this because is Final Fantasy kind of getting stale. On the other side of all this might be the perfect time for Sony to go in and maybe pick up Square Enix as a PlayStation studio once again, because I say once again because it's, in my brain they were always a PlayStation studio because PS1 days and all that. Square basically made a ton of PlayStation 1 games, so in my brain it was always Square was a PlayStation company. But this could actually be a very good time for Sony to pick up Square Enix and then do a lot of, you know, the Sony funding to make the next, you know, Final Fantasy stuff really shine and really pop, because they'll have so much more money to play around with. And they'll also have the studios, the mocap studios, the art department studios, the voice acting stuff and everything. You know, Sony has a lot of resources outside of just like, you know, we're going to throw money at the product. No, Sony has like all these different pockets of companies that they can push over to the gaming industry to help out. There's a reason why PlayStation Studios titles are so big and massive in scope and everything. And also the PS5. You know, PS5 is a workhorse. It is one hell of a console. So if they lost $2 billion in revenue, market revenue, again, Sony could come in for a very cheaper price and maybe scoop up Square Enix. So this could go that way, or it could go the way of Sony looking at it like, is it worth it? It's very hard to tell which way that would swing. I would think because Final Fantasy sells really well, and it's always been like kind of a one of those top market things for PlayStation. You know, it's Final Fantasy 7 remake and Rebirth, FF16, like all these different games that Square Enix makes that have been PlayStation exclusives. Maybe this would be just the icing on the cake of them being like, okay, let's go, let's pick the company up. I don't know. Again, we'll see in the future, but until then, go check out the rest of the YouTube channel, like, subscribe, hit the bell notification, all that good stuff. You know what to do. It's the YouTube things. So yeah, we'll keep an eye on all the Square Enix stuff. But until then, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for stopping by. And as always, I will see you next time.